available in PDF format. It's also our intention to record this and to make the recording available for those that were unable to join today. So Legacy, our mission here is to provide ministry-focused financial services to facilitate kingdom growth. We are here to serve the churches and provincial conferences of the Mennonite Brethren Church. We've got three primary categories of services that we're providing, and I think you're probably familiar with most of them. As far as the admin support, we do payroll and bookkeeping. The payroll touches almost 1,000 church employees across Canada. Group benefits, we're the administrator for both the health and dental insurance program as well as the pension plan. And again, there's about 950 active group participants. And then as far as financial assistance is concerned, we've got a pretty extensive mortgage program for both our churches and for pastors. And there's an investor program that provides the financial, the funds really to provide that mortgage program. So the first thing we're going to talk about are reserve funds, and very specifically a facility maintenance reserve fund. So as I'm sure you're aware, churches will often establish one or more types of reserve funds. These are amounts that are typically large dollar items, but for a very specific purpose. It allows you to set funds aside regularly, planning for the future. There's three primary categories. One that a lot of churches will establish is an operating reserve fund. Oftentimes, churches will make a determination to hold 3 to 6 months or sometimes more than that of their operating expenses in reserve for emergent purposes. Another common type of reserve fund is a building reserve fund, where you're going to make an acquisition of land or a church building, a church plant, or you're considering a significant expansion of an existing property. The one we're going to talk about today is something that's a little less common. That's a facility maintenance reserve fund. And why would we consider establishing something like this? It has to do with being good financial stewards. It also provides a good roadmap for new staff members as well as new board members. So the facility maintenance reserve fund here, certainly as buildings age, there are major components that need replacing. You can imagine what a roof can cost as an example. But often when churches are establishing their annual operating budget, they are not prioritizing these major repairs. And because these repairs happen infrequently, it becomes a little more tricky to sort of figure out when are we going to have to consider making major repairs or replacements. It's one thing to have to budget for paint, but if you're looking at having to do windows, security systems, things of this nature, they're bigger ticket items. And so again, this all reflects upon being good stewards and planning down the road. Now, we recognize that a facility maintenance reserve fund can often be considered a luxury. Smaller churches may not find it practical to set aside a certain amount every year for future major expenditures, and often will find it easier to fundraise on an ad hoc basis for these items when they come up. So the big question, how much to save each year, and how do you figure this out? So a depreciation report is a key ingredient to figuring out what an appropriate amount of money is to save every year. And there's really 6 different types of organizations or professionals that can be relied upon for this. A certified reserve planner is an individual or an organization that I have personal experience in utilizing, where they will come in and they will take a look at the major components, evaluate them, just to see what the age and condition is, and to come up with an estimate as to what these things are going to cost down the road. So this is an example of a depreciation report. It's about 10 years old, but I think the components are still very relevant here for the discussion today. You're going to see things like lights and windows. You're going to see the windows here under the exterior, that these have about a 35-year estimated life. In this case, these windows are 8 years old. They have about 27 years of remaining useful life. And can see what the cost is today to replace them, about $108,000. And so this will also give you an estimate as to how much money should be set aside every year. So with the windows here, I think that says $6,839. Other components, roofing, boilers, your elevator, these are all big ticket items that are part of this plan, but the professional will come in, they'll do a comprehensive review of the facility, all of the components there, the major ones, and then they will utilize certain assumptions, one of which is inflation. When you're looking at, not having to replace an item for 10, 15, 25 years, inflation is an important assumption. And the church does have the right to speak into their estimate as to what inflation is, but of course, the professional will also provide opinion on that as well. And then the other thing is the monies that you're setting aside for this fund have to be invested necessarily. So again, here you're going to make an assumption. What type of a return can we expect? Okay, and now here graphically, this sort of shows, you can see this one sort of starts back around 2015, 2014. But in this case, you've got the green boxes here. This is the annual contribution that the church makes. They include this part of their budget. And you can see these green boxes are growing over time. That reflects the effect of inflation. So with inflation, you're going to be increasing your annual contribution to the fund. And then, what you're going to see here is over time, around 2035, 2036, you're seeing some major expenditures. And here's where you can see the blue line sort of shows that this is the point in which you know that you have a deficit. So even though you've been saving money all of these years, money, of course, gets spent. And so you're see an accumulation over time of all the money that's saved. And as you're spending the money on the major components, naturally, this fund is going to deplete. And in this particular example, you can see around 2036, 2037, there are some major expenditures that are happening. So this is sort of something that you can prepare for. In this case, the church needs to do some fundraising, or they need to consider taking on some debt in order to pay for the necessary expenses. So now I just want to shift quickly to establishing an investment policy for your church. So what is this? This is really a set of rules, if you will, or parameters that sort of guide the decisions on how to invest money. Oftentimes the treasurer will make a decision on what to do. Are we being a good steward by having our checking account that pays 0% interest be large when the church could perhaps give some consideration to making some conservative investments that generates some type of interest income for the church. But, really, these don't have to be unnecessarily complex, but it just sets some parameters here. This is part of being good stewards of financial resources. It provides accountability as well for those who are making the decisions. So, as an example, if a church has established a facility repair replacement fund, you conceivably could be accumulating hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, of course, you would want to give consideration to investing that. But what do we invest in? Do we buy GICs from the bank? Would you consider investing some money with legacy? Sometimes people will think, maybe mutual funds are a good option, or you can consider the services of a professional financial advisor to put together an investment policy that's appropriate for your church. And again, this provides a roadmap for the employees that are in place now, the boards, and those that succeed us. So the common elements of an investment policy, what are your objectives? This, again, can be very simple. It's to generate a reasonable rate of return, as an example, with minimal risk. But you want to define what is the church's tolerance for risk? What are your return requirements? For example, we want to achieve a return at least equal to inflation. What's the time horizon? And here, if you're looking at something like a building reserve fund, your time horizon can be long, but you also know you've got it mapped out with the depreciation report, sort of when you're going to see some major draws. And that really speaks into the formation of the investment policy. What are your liquidity needs? As an example, if you have an operating reserve, your liquidity needs, you may consider that liquidity needs are high. How quickly do we need access to that money? Or if your church for several years has a history of never drawing upon that emergency reserve, would you consider a different type of investment? What restrictions could there be? For example, depending upon how deep you want to go, you're going to have certain things that you refuse to invest in as well. But really, this all speaks into what are appropriate investments. And the other element is this is a statement that needs to be reviewed periodically, good practice, have it reviewed and approved annually by the board. Now, we have an example of Legacy's investment policy statement on our website. We've got several of our operating policies on our website. This is, I would say, far more detail than typically a church may want to undertake. An investment policy can be as brief as a paragraph that has several sentences in it, but that addresses each of these elements. Now, I do want to put in a plug for churches have the ability to invest funds directly through Legacy. There are no fees with these notes that you may purchase. They are liquid. Typically, we ask for 30 to 45 days notice if we're talking about larger amounts. But all you have to do is give us a call. These are 6-month notes. We determine the interest rate on July 1st and January 1st of every year. Presently, we're paying 5%, but you can see that rate is only good until the end of this month. And we will be setting a new interest rate. It may still be 5% on July 1st, but it's a little too early to tell. But this is a good option for you to give consideration to if you need to park money in one of your reserve funds. And then we've got some contact information here for the different managers, depending upon what you'd like to talk to us about. So at this time. Certainly, if you have any questions, fire away. I think you can write them into the chat box there. You can also email them if you wish. And just as a reminder, I think what we can do is we can put those slides up onto our website. Let's see.
Jason, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
My name is Bernie Schmidtke. I'm with Sunridge Church in Kelowna. One of the comments I often receive about making investments or putting aside money as an investment vehicle is that there are certain tax or reporting implications that are negative. And I actually don't know much about that. I wonder if you can just comment on that, or is that really not a consideration?
Well, I'll qualify my response to that, and certainly I would invite other staff members to speak into this. But as far as tax implications are concerned, Jim, help me out here. What's the CRA discussion with regards to the use of the spending requirements there? What percent of the charity's assets can be invested in activities that are not directly related to the objective or the object of the charity? Jim, you're muted. Normally we like that.
Yeah, Jason, you are right. That percentage escapes me. I'd need to give a proper answer. I'd need to research that, but that is something for consideration. That there are guidelines stipulated by CRA in that regard.
Well, just knowing that there's somewhere that these percentages are somewhere, I can go looking for those. But thank you for making me aware of that.
Yeah,
the 4Cs is an excellent resource for our churches. My understanding is 85% of our MB churches do have a membership. So I do want to put in a plug for the 4Cs. There's a wealth of reference material available for you. I want to, so I think just Bernd, back to your question, in and of itself, this is why it's important to, if you're establishing a reserve fund, to have a very specific purpose that's identified and to have the members approve the purpose of the reserve fund. So, I think that, if having an operating reserve is one thing, but if you're talking about doing a church plant, some churches are involved in that, or that the church is going to do a significant expansion of its property, conceivably you're talking about saving hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of dollars in advance before starting that. Certainly you could also speak to your auditor if you're utilizing one, to ask them for advice. But I think it's important that your church members have the opportunity to approve anything. But I don't really think that if you've got reserve funds with clearly identified purposes, I can't imagine that there's many times that churches run afoul of these minimum spending requirements, because the purposes or objects of the church are general. Typically they're not specific. So often, even say renting out the building, you're still achieving the church objects. So I don't know if that's helpful. I hope that
that's good. Thank you.
Jim, you mentioned, or Jason, sorry, you mentioned the church legacy accounts, and there just might be some people wondering about how to go ahead and what the process is to open that account and who can open an account with legacy.
Okay, Kaylee, would you like to answer that, seeing as how you brought that up?
Yeah, yeah, that's not a problem. So we do have an application that's required from the church. So part of those legacy accounts, it can be anybody that's an MB church or an organization, some camps, et cetera, are included in that as well. So you would simply just email our legacy general inbox, let us know that you're interested in opening up that account. We have a one-page application that would need to be completed and signed by your authorized signers, and then we would that would need to be sent to us by mail, and then typically at the same time you would send your check for your initial investment. Some church governance allows those funds to be sent through online banking, but depending on what your church allows and requires, often it's done by check. And then we send statements out every 6 months. We send a statement out right when the account is open, and then every 6 months in July and January going forward.
I could just add one thing to what Kaylee shared. The process for our churches to deposit or invest is significantly different than for individual church members. Church members are required to go through Capstone Investments of Langley. They serve as our exempt market dealer. This is a requirement under provincial securities legislations, but they are a faith-based investment fund manager and advisor based out of Langley. And we've been working with them for approximately 5 years now. But that process is quite a bit different. The individual has to contact Capstone. Churches can contact us directly.
Jason, I have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about reserve funds and certified reserve planners. I'm not familiar with that. Would these be auditors? Would they be just this totally separate category of people? And my second question is, do you have any idea what that would cost the church? Like, how do they charge? Is it based on size of church or whatever?
Well, as I said, I had one experience with a Calgary-based firm that their category was certified reserve planner. The funny thing about all of that is the gentleman that came, I had him in the basement and he was looking at the walls of the church and he's smiling. I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "I remember when these walls were put up and they're still not straight." So it turns out that, his history went back more than 40 years. But 10 years ago, so this was a Calgary-based firm. 10 years ago, the cost of the depreciation report was only $5,000. And every year we paid another $750 for them to return to ask, what has changed? What have you replaced? Has anything deteriorated? And then to redo the Excel spreadsheet. Now, I'm sure that prices have gone up significantly. So as an example, for that church, that was about a 1,000 square foot building that was still pretty new. I think it was 8 years old on average. But, certainly, as an example, in BC, I know that rules have changed recently with regards to condo stratas, where these reports are now going to be required. You can no longer defer this, but of course, churches are not likely to be stratas. So there are a number of different choices available to the church, but I think having somebody who understands what the reserve fund is for and is asked to do depreciation report. That's why we list architects, engineers, etc. But I think there's several choices that are available. And I see here, Courtney has said here about stratas, finding firms who perform this are easy to find just by Googling for it in BC. So I think, it doesn't take very long. Your church may not be located in BC, but very quickly you're going to see the types of organizations that are providing these depreciation reports, and then you can do a search in your area.
Jason, I have a question that has been asked. If my church is struggling to meet the budget each year, how would you recommend we move forward with creating a reserve?
Does this question have to do specifically with a reserve replacement fund? I'll assume that it does. Practically speaking, we know that this is a very difficult thing to save for in a disciplined fashion. What I've observed at my own church is they held to this program for several years, and then they had to stop. They stopped about 4 years ago. And so now they are having to pick that up, but they're still not able to set aside, I think today would be about $75,000 a year. So certainly there are always going to be competing priorities. Paying for staff is one of those priorities. So this type of a savings is necessarily going to be one of the first to get removed. So my comment on that is let it happen. If you have to stop saving for it, you have to stop saving for it. But the following year or years later, when the church is in a position to begin saving again, you should update the depreciation report, because now things have changed. There's been less money that has accumulated over a period of time. And probably what hasn't changed is the actual depreciation schedule. And so all it's going to do now is sort of lay it out. Here are the difficulties or the time points when you're going to have major expenditures. And it then means that you'll probably have to do fundraising for a specific project, or perhaps give consideration to taking on a mortgage or some type of a debt facility in order to effect those repairs, replacements. Any more questions on investment policy or reserve funds? One thing that we would like to do, this is the first time that we're offering a webinar. We chose the topics, but we would like our churches to choose future topics. They don't have to relate directly to financial policies. If we have enough interest in other subjects, we can bring in subject matter experts to lead the discussion. I know that Carson is going to be posting a survey link here at the end of our time in the chat box. We ask that you click on that link. And Carson, what do we have? Three questions there? Well, you've posted it. I'm going to click on.
I think we have 4 or 5, because one question relates to the time of day, and then there's a place for people to suggest alternate times. So it's not a very long survey.
Wonderful. Okay, yeah, thanks for posting that. So if you'd be so kind as to take the time, it speaks into whether this was of value to you, but we'd also like to find out what would you like us to provide to you. And so again, we would invite administrators within the church. There could be elders, board members that have an interest in certain subjects as well. And the subjects can be broad. It can be something on governance. It doesn't really matter. If we have an understanding as to what you'd like to hear about, we invite you to fill that out.
I'll just mention as well that we intend to put the recording of the webinar today on our website. It will likely be in the news section of our website, so you should be able to find that pretty easily, or you can email our legacy@mbchurches account.
Yeah, and here we've got our contact information, website, and emails as well. Do feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're here to serve you. Okay, last call for any questions. Doesn't appear that there are any. Thanks again for taking the time to visit with us today. And wish you blessings.
Thanks for hosting.
It was our pleasure. One thing we could do here, I don't know, are you able to stop recording now if any